Hello, black actors. I want to do a charity and name it YouTube Ground, if that's okay. Well, if not, we'll name it something else. And different things. And in other words, where we're going to switch colors historically and as soon as we can, with that connected to modern versions of what was left off by a hyper tribe, which we need to put, into counter positions, theories and uses of them, and convictions and opinions that cannot defend themselves and afford defenses of any individual group or together, using using correlation nature simultaneously inherent active and progressive means as evidence. No. And them needing to pretend other and screen how needing to pretend other per a breaching method that effectively uses positive and negative treatments, time treatments, simultaneously too fast, too slow to get over on forever nature being. Each identity individually grouped in together, only the extent of it is debatable. But again, we have also recorded since before founding, offensively, the science is individually grouped in together in collusion with people's opinions and convictions at all locations, criminally foreign influence known. The lawyers, witch trials, all that. Those were laws that were syntax tied, specifically to be functions tied, specifically to maintain, simultaneously everyone blaming other things, others and or on themselves. Power one method, but that one method knows how to exploit, which is manifest simultaneously as a trinity, and where it can't be a divided nature and a solid nature. It is also 5 identities of sequence nature. We are from inside what is also, while it is being, the value of the order of the finite. The smallest details that we could grapple with or even discern. There's an order to the smallest details of our bodies. Those identities individually grouped and together, they have a semi-nature relationship to our identities individually. And that is simultaneously grouped. And that is simultaneously species identity of volume /S per science. Those are 3 distinct identities of volume, where volume equals value as nature / nature as value. One identity of forever nature is making more of itself. Only the extent of it is debatable. Extent /S. But they've been getting away, people at all locations, areas, and states of all modern countries. Criminally foreign influence, so positive and negative treatments and collusion. Time treatments and collusion against the quality of fact treatment nature, capable of defending itself and of affording any individual group to tell about the breaching method that is leveraged here or there because it was from 7 ancient times. It wrought victim predator. It wrought victim modern nations, countries A through Z, territories A through Z, incapable of defending themselves as fact treatment nature, as names treatments, as identities, titles, location, the voices through us. Humanity's volume, science, increasingly no longer its own. So it made them, not when they're fighting and entertaining each other, individually grouped and together, sick, where each country has people that come together. And they say, we know it's sick, but we're tied like this. So they blame other things, others themselves, and even more incorrectly, like in other words, blaming England. England is bigger than England, if with that logic. So in other words, there are proofs that England only preserved English. The republic for which we stand had already been intercultural. It had been revealed more probably, more practically, than what is formally convicted and informally. It had been revealed by the entire species working together before scientists, became self-valued, criminally foreign influenced, not realizing that what was being used remotely but not just by a minority from every country. In other words, it took every identity of sophistication, even the sophistication that countries can be and are. It made them a pseudo-sophistication relative to a predicate acts delivery system method that understood, because the ancients understood, where and how and why branches of government are manifest as a trinity, and where and how and why simultaneously the importance of understanding how and why with exception/exception nature, differentially, constantly, increasingly, that true too. And per the method, that's naturally, and a breach of methods exploiting our natural identity of the grounds, identity of relationship to it and to itself, as a distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous volume of the same identity of hyper-simultaneous nature, that the three distinct simultaneous natures we are simultaneously has value, individual, grouped, and together. In other words, I forgot what it is onto its identity of volume, of hypervolume. Its identity of relationship to itself, in the value of that. They are distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously every volume/S, relevant to where and how these three volumes, for example, individual, grouped, and together, where and how they are manifest, where and how the cell nucleus, cell body, and the cell wall are manifest. I am not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal, I'm not a judge. Originally and still, they were our recorded inclusion of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the interbranch and all exceptions and exception nature tied to them. They had to defend their roles with witch trials, even and especially if they were made up, especially differentially. Not to blame a person, but the law has to blame someone relative to a crime. That's, in other words, but we have to, this is how legislation works. These number of people have to agree, and then we legislate it, so we're leaders. A leader has only been capable of self-valuing roles with locations, areas, and states leaders, sciences leaders further, simultaneously private database relationships, increasingly tall identity of the ground locations, also with overt criminal enterprise, private one, killers, people next to the body, investigators themselves are used remotely. All identities of sophistication. This exploits where we are a value/value progression, which is a better metaphor for the current coming through a wire. That's the first counterposition. We can debate counterposition, because I'm not an electrical engineer, but they use water coming through pipe with the examples and books about that and videos about that. So I'll put a link to a video about a circuit. So theories inter sciences, like the theory of relativity, is recorded effectively used where and how people are playing games with quality of fact treatment nature, with time treatments, where and how interbranch and the foreign and criminals and killers, overt criminal enterprises, at locations they have collusion together. So there are a whole bunch of men and women involved with the intelligence community in foreign countries to have insights into how the colleges and universities have conjunctions to everywhere everyone lives, to where and how the suburban pathology of homes, so to speak, and means to them and means to take care of them, things like that. It was all from a tactically denatured base, consciously, methodically juxtaposed with exceptions and exception nature ulterior from what nature is trying to show us exception and exception nature is about, which is that hyper-simultaneous nature. It is exception/exception nature, and we are not supposed to agree about the name of it. There are proofs, all kinds, all ways. It is the name Allah spelled in English spells alpha longs, long alphas high, long alphas high. And there are proofs that yin yang and alpha and omega were revealed to be taught together. Yin yang can never part and can only get bigger. There is only more and more forever nature being made, and there is only more and more of the value of it being made. And there is the phenomenon demonstrating this, where only more and more of its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that being made. For example, Leith of Hadith is more probably about this, as exceptions in exception nature and demonstration of the same thing. Because anything that is the first conviction, the first hyper conviction, not counter and hyper theory, and hyper conviction, not just hyper theory. In other words, as counter to other theory, is that anything that is invisible but is still discernible, if it is not being appreciating, if it is not the system, in other words, if it's not, there is still a semi-nature relationship to what needs to be discerned simultaneously with the invisible but still discernible, like the value of the predicate and the value of the subject and the value of the sentence. That those are invisible but still discernible. There is a hyper discernible, hyper invisible but still discernible, inseparable from the smallest finite part of English grammar and of other languages, and of the active parts and of the progressive parts, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. And during demonstration also, there are two other identities of sequence/simultaneous nature that are relevant, and that being, again, ordered to the bonded distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously as the three, as the finite, the active, and the progressive. So note definite in the note finite, note the word finite in the word definite of the definite article, the. There's only one definite article. And then there are two indefinite articles of English grammar, a and an. So N stands for neutrality. Y is always value. It is a constant. Is where it is a variable value. That is only exception and exception nature and demonstration of the same thing, /S. English was also revealed to be taught using the phenomenon of how and why. The science of sharing identity that is in demonstration to us. See, but now, in other words, the worst negatives, as long as we're real about them, and we deal with it simultaneous, we discern, we hyper discern, which also needs uses of the word God, and where this is completely science, as a hyper variable. And because the five God variables in demonstration of what is invisible, hyper invisible, but still discernible only one way. And this is hyper algebra because it only will and can stay positive increasingly onto itself. If we take and make its nature as only a part of it, our temporary / lasting forever nature, which can only temporarily be positive. It is simultaneously, however, may attach to it and making as more positive or negative further as a quality of diffusion. Leaf of Hadith is one of the things in demonstration of this, that being forced space nature transfer. I didn't read that. This is what I think Leaf of Hadith meant. Some people refer to it, some dictionaries refer to it as stream of consciousness. There is a hyper-consciousness that is inseparable from and while as our consciousness. It is a state of being that cannot be. Temporary states, for example, unless being the simultaneous value of all of them at once. But this is where the campus became dunce, and all knowledge and sense and sensibilities by it, they became criminally foreign influence, criminal insidious as positive and negative treatments, where every single person is good, positive, longing that in others, longing that for themselves, longing that for groups. That is offensively prevented by an identity theft / fraud method to exploit this method / S we are naturally. We are quality as fact treatment nature, where we are syntax nature. They have treatments of, we have readings of statutes. Our founding parents, first of all, George Washington, if we are honest and we interpret any soul honestly, especially our founders, our founding parents, they needed us. I shouldn't even refer to them as parents, but our founders, a species volume, the same one. Boxing is fun when way alone there's a way to fight where if any individual or any group wins, everyone wins. We are not using evolution science, but it only feels like games. All exceptions in exception nature are in demonstration of it. So we have the ill-natured games. Not because they have guns involved with it, because from off all science locations, what was entertained, they knew those sciences people would have to pretend the theater of integrity as victims, where and how those identities of sciences, names and titles, that would be required. In other words, the South could discern. How are you guys going to play the roles without understanding? Everyone's lying to it. Everyone's preventing anyone from demonstrating about how the breaching method made everyone roles with such sick things. They're blaming our founding parents in classes because they need to blame on because of the method.